Good morning, everyone. My name is Albert Fox-Kahn, and I'm the Executive Director of the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project. I'm so proud to be here today with so many amazing elected officials, allies, advocates, fighting to outlaw facial recognition in stores and when it's used by landlords. This technology has gone unregulated, unchecked for too long. We've seen how the rich and powerful can use it to fuel vendettas against their enemies, to take revenge against those who simply want to exercise their rights in a court of law. We've seen how landlords can use this to intimidate and target rent-stabilized tenants, and this cannot continue. This technology is error-prone, it is biased, and it is incompatible with democracy as we know it, and that's why it is so important that today the City Council is taking this crucial step in pushing forward legislation, not simply to regulate this technology around the margins, but to ban it. And with that, I'd like to invite our first speaker up, New York City Council member Shahana Hanif.
Thank you. Woo! Thank you. We'll begin with the chant, ban the scan!
Ban the scan! Ban the scan! Ban the scan!
Ban the scan! Hey, good. Now we have some energy. Woo! I'm Councilmember Shahana Hanif, and I'm so proud to stand with Ban the Scan Coalition. Thank you, STOP, NYCLU, Amnesty International, Freedom to Thrive, Freedom for Our Future, Action Network. Thank you so much for this coalition and the work that you've been doing for years now to protect the safety and dignity of New Yorkers and protecting, most importantly, our democracy. What Albert has shared is a serious threat that is happening to our democracy, and we cannot allow it. Today, I'm proud to be a Muslim. I often get asked, what does Muslim representation mean to you as a Muslim elected official? And it means to be able to do this work, to advance our democracy, and to push back against the surveillance tools that are a huge threat to everyday New Yorkers. My community was impacted by the post 9/11 surveillance state. I witnessed my community violently scarred by the Muslim surveillance program, the Patriot Act, the creation of the NYPD Demographics Unit, the ICE agents. They have left our community scarred, and we are still healing from those pains. We were singled out as a community by informants, crawling into our communities, in our mosques, in our college campuses. As a CUNY student, I witnessed the impacts, the egregious impacts of an informant CUNY hopping and picking on vulnerable Muslim students. This was happening without a single suspicious activity. A single suspicious activity. And that is not right. And now biometrics technology, facial recognition tools are a part of the same toolbox. They are racist, discriminatory tools of surveillance. And we cannot allow for that expansion. We know who these tools disproportionately impact. They impact immigrants. They impact our faith communities. They impact Black folks. And so I'm so proud of my colleagues, and particularly council members, chairs Williams, Gutierrez, for holding this afternoon's hearing, oversight hearing, to learn more about the ways in which these tools threat our democracy. But we have to go one step further. We want to see the passage of these two important bills and ensure that they thwart, that we are fighting back against the anti-democratic values that they bring, but we have to make sure that we ban police and government use of facial recognition and biometrics. And that is a piece of legislation that we want to see enacted and passed as well with this package. Thank you all so much for being here, and I look forward to the support and seeing through the passage of both of these bills, the ban of facial recognition in places of public accommodation and banning biometrics by landlords in our homes. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. Next, we're going to be hearing from a community activist and a staff member of New York State Senator Jabari Brisport's office, Fabian Rogers, who not only does work to serve the people of Brooklyn every day, but who has single-handedly taken on the threat posed by facial recognition in his own building. Fabian.
Ban the scan.
Ban the scan. Ban the scan.
Ban the scan. I want to say good morning, hello to everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Again, my name is Fabian Rogers. I work as a constituent advocate from the Senator Brisport's office. And it's interesting and it's kind of ironic that I'm coming here from a state capacity. But the point is, we're talking about these technologies and how they're being developed and deployed. It's clear within this nation, in the U.S. alone, it's up to the localities, different states, in different local levels, from city to state to federal, to be able to go about bringing on the regulations and the enforcement that need to be done in order to see justice overall for everyday people. I come from this with experiential knowledge, as I was once a tenant that had a landlord that tried to install facial recognition because there was no legislation out there at the time that dealt with these types of matters, that allowed for folks to keep their privacy and their autonomy in their own home. And so I come to this from the perspective of seeing this expand, as this is a great victory and a step in the right direction, as we see City Council taking on the burden of dealing with this and bringing a sense of regulation and proper enforcement against landlords, private institutions, and other sort of private sectors that are trying to use the lack of proper regulation and legislation to go about bringing upon erroneous, non-validated, racist, biased, beyond a doubt, technologies, and using them on people that don't have the time nor the resources to properly advocate for themselves. I'm just one of the many who don't have the time to be within these spaces, and I take it upon myself to take that burden to represent the everyday man, because I was just that just 5 years ago. I came into this space in 2018, and I come in here 2023, super proud to see that there are folks within New York that basically understand and take this very seriously as I do. So I hope today folks see that this is a step in the right direction to see proper regulation and enforcement to go against private sectors alike. Thank you for your time.
What's our plan?
Ban the scan.
What's our plan?
Ban the scan.
What's our plan?
Ban the scan.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. All right, next we're going to hear from an incredible advocate for this legislation, without whom we would not be here today. We're going to hear from City Council member Jennifer Gutierrez. Council member.
Woo!
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Jennifer Gutierrez. I represent Bushwick, Williamsburg, and Bridgewood, and I'm also the chair of the Council's Technology Committee. And today really marks an exciting time for the hearing that we're going to host alongside Councilmember Natasha Williams, chair for the Council's Committee on Civil Rights. She approached our team very early on last year saying, there's something here. There is a violation here. We are not doing enough to protect New Yorkers, and we really should really think about posting something together to really elevate the realities of what the collection of biometric data means, of how it's being utilized to continue to harm Black and brown New Yorkers or marginalized New Yorkers. So we're looking forward to hearing from advocates today who've been leading this movement on more transparency, more accountability. We know that this mayor has spoken very publicly around the support for integrating more technology and more innovation practices to improve government. But we need to know what that looks like, and let us be the judge of if this is in fact really improving government, if this is improving services to New Yorkers. Because if it's not doing that, it's just costing taxpayers more and more money to do a job that it doesn't need to do. So I look forward to this hearing, to this robust conversation. Again, want to shout out Councilmember Hanif for her bill that she's going to be introing, as well as Councilmember Rivera for her bill as well. And looking forward to this conversation alongside Councilmember Williams today. We will continue to have this discussion. It does not end today. This is a really large opportunity to come at this comprehensively, to work with advocates, to work with experts who know how to do this well, who know the communities and been working with those communities that have been disproportionately protected. And in our goal for to be the most transparent and the most equitable city council, we'll continue to do that through our committee. So thank you all so much to the advocates for having me here, and I look forward to the hearing. I hope you all stick around.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you so much for holding this hearing today, and again for making it possible for these bills to move forward. Next, we're going to hear from an advocate who has been a part of this movement all along, who represents a pillar of the civil rights community here in New York City, Daniel Shores, who is at the New York Civil Liberties Union as a senior privacy and technology strategist. Daniel.
Thank you, Albert. Whether in our streets, in our buildings, or in our public transit system, biometric surveillance technologies like face and voice recognition are increasingly being deployed on us in secretive, unregulated, and oppressive ways. Biometric surveillance presents an unprecedented threat to everyone's privacy and civil liberties, enabling the invasive power to track who we are, where we go, and who we meet. For example, tracking people at protests, political rallies, or places of worship. And it is a civil rights and equity issue, painfully clear when looking at which communities bear the brunt of over-surveillance and over-policing. These technologies are also notoriously inaccurate and racially biased. Numerous studies have shown that face surveillance is particularly inaccurate for women and people of color. Each publicly known case in which a person was arrested on the basis of facial recognition misidentification involved the wrongful arrest of a black man. And in the cases where we know the utilized software, it involves DataWorks Plus and Clearview AI, both products the NYPD has been using excessively. We also know of the highly flawed, unscientific, and even unlawful practices that pervade the NYPD's facial recognition program. Editing photos, using celebrity lookalikes as stand-ins, entering sealed records, and much more. The use by private entities is no less concerning. The deployment by MSG Entertainment across its sports and entertainment venues to target staff from law firms in litigation with MSG points to Orwellian use cases where it will be impossible to move and associate freely. And the technology's racial as well as gender bias risks disproportionately impacting women and people of color, such as the misidentification of a black teenager and barred her from entering an ice skating rink. When used in housing, tenants should not have to live in fear that landlords are tracking their comings and goings and amassing sensitive data on them and their guests. It's time for the City Council to decisively act. The Council must pass bans on biometric surveillance by government, in particular by law enforcement, and in other areas where our fundamental rights are at stake and where informed consent cannot be given. The bills in front of the Council committees today would ban biometric surveillance in residential buildings and in public accommodation. The New York Civil Liberties Union strongly supports them and urges for their passage. Thank you.
What's our plan?
Ban the scan!
What's our plan?
Ban the scan!
What's our plan?
Ban the scan!
Thank you so much, Daniel. Next, we're going to hear from an incredible advocate who fights every day for New Yorkers, Derek Perkinson, the National Action Network's Crisis Director and New York State Field Director. Derek. Yes, thank you. Woo! No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
Thank you. In the words of Al Sharpton, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. I'm Derek Perkinson, the New York State Field Director and Crisis Director for the National Action Network, one of the leading civil rights organizations in the nation with chapters throughout the entire United States. Founded 32 years ago by Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton, NAN works in the spirit and tradition of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to promote a modern civil rights agenda that includes the fight for one standard of justice, decency, and equal opportunities for all people regardless of their race, religion, and nationality. We're here today to talk to you about the importance of banning facial recognition technology in our communities. This is an issue that affects us all and requires our immediate attention. Facial recognition technology poses a significant threat to our civil liberties, our civil rights, and the privacy of our citizens. It is biased and broken, with studies showing that it is up to 100 times more likely to misidentify a black and brown person and those from a white individual. This technology has been used to target and discriminate against communities of color,
and we cannot allow this to continue. The use of facial recognition technology also has the potential to stifle free speech and infringe on our constitutional rights. For example, the use of facial recognition at a public protest could be used to identify and target individuals engaging in peaceful protests or other forms of free expression. This is a clear violation of our First Amendment rights, and we must take action to prevent it. And today's hearing is the first step in doing that. Additionally, the use of facial recognition technology in law enforcement and government surveillance is a major concern. It is well documented that facial recognition technology has been used to target and monitor individuals based on their religion, their race, and other protected characteristics. This is unacceptable and goes against everything our democracy stands for. Therefore, we are calling for a ban on facial recognition and other biometric technologies in residential buildings. We are calling for a ban on facial recognition technology and other biometric technologies in places of public accommodations, such as stores and sports arenas. We have 2 bills in place. The council members are here. This is a start. The council must pass them. However, we must go further in implementing a full ban on police and government use of facial recognition here in New York City. Facial recognition and biometric surveillance disproportionately target BIPOC, immigrant, and Muslim New Yorkers. It is time for New York to catch up to other cities around the country that have already banned facial recognition, such as Boston, San Francisco, and Portland. I close by saying the National Action Network supports a ban on facial recognition technology and is a critical step in protecting our democracy and the rights of our citizens. It is time for us to take up action and ensure this technology does not continue to be used to discriminate and infringe upon our rights. Thank you. No justice,
No peace.
Thank you, Derek. As Derek made clear, the bills that are before the council today go a long way in protecting New Yorkers' rights. They must pass to defend against facial recognition in stores and in our homes. But we need the council to also move forward legislation to ban police facial recognition. It's taken 2 years to get these 2 bills introduced. It can't take another 2 years to get police facial recognition introduced. Next, we're going to hear from a champion of this issue in the City Council member Carlina Rivera.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the advocates here to stop to ban the scan coalition. It is really these individuals that are here to hold us accountable, because governments have a responsibility to implement a regulatory framework, to look at how we can deepen the trust and the relationships between the public and government. And what we are seeing right now, how people are using facial recognition technology to identify whistleblowers, to identify critics, to stifle free speech, to really harass historically marginalized and disenfranchised communities. You have seen some of the statistics and the data. Black women being misidentified at an alarmingly higher rate than their white counterparts. And whether it's non-binary, people of color, low-income people, these are the groups that are being targeted and will be if we do not put laws into place that will regulate and stop any abuse, period. And yes, we do have to do that among our city agencies, within departments like the NYPD. We've seen what they're doing with tech, and really doing it on this sort of path where they're not including the city council and they're not including their colleagues in government, when we've seen the DigiDogs roaming our streets. And where did we see it first? In public housing. It only took public outcry, advocates, and people saying, stop, we have rights, for them to stop that. And what did they do? They just waited and rolled it out once again. So now we need legislative action. And that's why we are here. This conversation finally happening is because of the advocates that are here, and it's because of my fearless colleagues and Chair Gutierrez, who who's making sure that we hold every city agency accountable and that we're going to hear these bills today. So with that, I just want to say thank you to Chair Gutierrez for doing this. This is a really big deal. You've heard other cities have already done it. We should be leading the way. So we are here to make sure that we ask the right questions, whether it's going to make sure that they're in residential buildings or public areas. My bill limits the use of facial recognition technology in residential buildings. We see more landlords implementing technological solutions to enhance amenity and security for residents. But facial recognition and biometric identifier systems, it opens the door for discrimination and harassment. It absolutely does, and we all know that it will have a disproportionate impact on already vulnerable residents. It already has, and it will continue to do so if we do not do something right now. Many New Yorkers, they share serious concerns, and you all have heard what is going on. Common user misidentification to the potential, the increase in presence of the accuracy of surveillance. Governments have to establish safeguards, we have to protect rights, and we have to increase transparency.
Yes.
Right? We have to do that, and that is something that we have been struggling with, you know, as just a body, and we have to be better. New Yorkers deserve better. So we also, the Anti-Eviction Mapping Project, they published that report on the New York City housing market. We saw narratives from tenants on how this technology negatively impacts their quality of life, and it creates this carceral environment in the home, in the building, and in communities. It will further displacement, and we have already seen too many losses. 200,000 Black individuals, Black families leaving New York City. We already have too many challenges and obstacles in the way that is negatively impacting our collective identity. So it is up to us now to do this, and with the people behind us. So with that, I'm very proud to have introduced this bill, for it to be heard, and I'm looking forward to the hearing. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, council member. Thank you for introducing legislation to protect so many New Yorkers. Next, we're going to hear from one of the co-leaders of the Ban the Scan Coalition, fighting against facial recognition, not just in New York City, not just in New York State, but around the world. I'm so happy to introduce Amnesty International USA organizer, Atiya Latif. Atiya.
Good afternoon, everyone. As a Muslim American and a New Yorker, I've witnessed firsthand just how biased, broken, and undemocratic facial recognition technology is.
Can you hold on 1 second? Let the ambulance pass or siren?
In the meantime, no justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace. Ban the scan. Ban the scan. Ban the scan. Ban the scan.
All right.
Very slow.
It's really loud. That's all. It'll kind of drown you out on air. That's all.
It wouldn't be an authentic New York press conference without at least one siren.
I've got a bill for that.
For that.
He does, actually.
Amazing.
All right. Thank you, young lady. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, don't worry. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As a Muslim American and a New Yorker, I've witnessed firsthand just how biased, broken, and undemocratic facial recognition technology is. I've seen it used to disproportionately target Muslim, Black, and Brown Americans, subjecting them to expanded police surveillance and to unjust targeting. As New Yorkers, we deserve to have our civil rights protected, not infringed upon in our own homes and in the public venues that we frequent. That's why at Amnesty, we believe the only adequate facial recognition technology is a total ban. FRT doesn't just help advance racist perceptions of Black and Brown New Yorkers, it also disproportionately threatens our rights. The expansive reach of facial recognition technology leaves entire neighborhoods and protest sites across the city exposed to mass surveillance. Even when it works, facial recognition can exacerbate discriminatory policing. We've heard the statistic that facial recognition technology is 100 times more likely to misidentify a Black woman than it is to misidentify a white person. And it can also prevent the free and safe exercise of the right to protest through the chilling effect. We saw that at Amnesty when we sued the NYPD for what was happening during the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. That it is by design a technology of mass surveillance that means that it is antithetical to human rights. And we've already seen this in so many of the cases across New York today. It is not okay that there are over 25,000 surveillance cameras currently in use across this city. That is why Amnesty is asking for the council members to advocate for New Yorkers of color, for our neighbors and constituents by passing the 2 pieces of legislation that are on the docket today at the hearing. We cannot wait till individuals are wrongfully arrested, surveilled en masse, and virtually lined up as used as experimental sites for racist, invasive, and violent technologies. We need meaningful regulation and accountability, but we also need a total ban. We need to ban the scan. Thank you.
What's our plan?
Ban the scan.
What's our plan?
Ban the scan.
Next, we're going to hear from a champion of the facial recognition campaigns across the country, fighting against facial recognition in concert venues and other public accommodations. From Fight for the Future, I want to welcome Hallie Thornton. Hallie.
Woo!
Hey everyone, thank you so much. As Albert said, my name is Hallie Thornton and I'm with the digital rights organization Fight for the Future. Also a proud New York City resident of over 13 years. It's an honor to be here among so many incredible privacy and racial justice advocates, both the City Council and at the grassroots community level. Right now, New York City has the opportunity to join Portland, Oregon in passing groundbreaking legislation that protects everyday people from the dangers of facial recognition technology. Facial recognition gives companies and government agencies unprecedented power to automatically track us without our consent, recording where we go and who we know. Not only is this a massive invasion of privacy, it also supercharges policing and incarceration systems that target Black people, poor people, immigrants, activists, women, and LGBTQ people. In New York, we've seen how in the hands of rich individuals like James Dolan, facial recognition can be abused for profit and power. It's just a matter of time before this powerful technology becomes the tool of choice for anti-rights activists and other individuals seeking to terrorize and harm people, such as anti-abortion extremists camped out in front of abortion clinics. By passing legislation restricting the use of facial recognition, New York City will stand out among cities globally as a champion for privacy, bodily autonomy, and human rights, not surveillance and profit. Thank you so much.
Woo!
All right, I say, what do we tell Dolan? You say, ban the scan. What do we tell Dolan?
Ban the scan.
What do we tell Amazon?
Ban the scan.
This is what we're going to do, not just for the companies that we've already talked about, but for every company banning for every company abusing facial recognition. Next, we're going to hear from another advocate fighting against this terrifying technology, from Freedom to Thrive, Catherine Barnett. Catherine.
Woo!
Good afternoon.
At Freedom to Thrive, our work is led and informed by people directly impacted by the immigration and prison system, who have been or have had loved ones deported or locked up. Their experiences with immigration is also impacted by the intersections of race, gender, housing, education, and labor. The issue of public safety and the criminalization of Black and brown people directly impact us all. The reliance on facial recognition and biometric technology as a safety strategy actually puts more people at risk in our communities. We know in the Black and brown communities that racial bias is programmed into technology and that the technology targets us in our neighborhoods. Use of these technologies increases the likelihood of continuous surveillance, expanding carceral systems, increases the likelihood of data breaches, increases the likelihood of false identification. We're here in New York. This is a sanctuary city that doesn't even live up to the fullness of that definition. And now people's homes can't even be their sanctuary. Landlords are collecting biometric information No restrictions on how this information is shared, and it becomes an excuse to further gentrify and push Black and brown people out of neighborhoods. New York City must catch up to other cities around the country that have already banned facial recognition. We talked about them: Boston, San Francisco, and Portland, Oregon. We call on the City Council to follow the leadership here by the folks introducing these bills to pass them. Pass a ban on facial recognition and other biometric technologies in residential buildings and in places of public accommodation, and go further. Implement a full ban on police and government use of facial recognition in New York City. Ban the scan!
Ban the scan!
Thank you so much, Catherine. Last but certainly not least, we are going to hear from another longtime advocate against facial recognition from the Surveillance Resistance Lab, senior researcher and organizer, Allie Flynn. Allie.
Thank you so much. My name is Allie Flynn. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Surveillance Resistance Lab, an NYC organization that focuses on corporate and state surveillance systems as one of the greatest threats we face to democracy, racial equity, economic justice, and migrant justice. Our work comes out of a decade of tracking ICE raids and collusion with the NYPD to target immigrant New Yorkers in New York City, and seeing how they increasingly rely on surveillance technologies, including biometrics. Biometric surveillance technologies, including facial recognition, are a monumental threat to democracy and our rights and security, not only our privacy. We urgently call on the City Council to pass these two bills, but these bills are only one step. We need a full ban on government use of biometric surveillance tech in our city, in line with other jurisdictions, including Boston and San Francisco. And this is also because we lack state and federal protections, so we are relying on our city and our City Council. Biometric surveillance has been increasingly weaponized across the world and in our city to take away people's rights, liberties, and deny access to basic resources. Facial recognition systems in the US have been used to criminalize poverty, facilitate mass arrests and incarceration of BIPOC communities, surveil demonstrators exercising their First Amendment rights, and target immigrants for deportation. The MSG Entertainment case shows just how easy it is for companies and law enforcement to implement these invasive biometric surveillance systems with justifications around public safety, but use those technologies to target people when they decide they are threats. Without action by the city, this will only grow. Biometric surveillance does not make people safe. It is not a less violent alternative to policing. It is a central part of policing systems, whether deployed by law enforcement, corporate landlords, or other business entities. And increased accuracy rates will never fix the fundamental flaws of biometric surveillance technology, because technology and algorithms are never neutral. They will always reflect the biases of the people who make them and the systems that use them. I want to close by saying that last night we saw tenants and some of our council members here bravely speak out at the Rent Guidelines Board to protect tenants from rent increases. Thank you. To protect tenants from rent increases that have already made life untenable in this city. They urge the city to listen to people and not corporate interests, and today we ask the council to do its part to protect tenants and New Yorkers across the city in the same way. We ask you to limit the power of corporate entities to extract our data for their profit and their systems of control. This is not just a privacy issue. This is about housing rights, it's about economic justice, it's about racial justice, it's about migrant justice, it's about true public safety. It's about what kind of city we want to be and who the city is for. That's right. Ban the scan!
Ban the scan! Ban the scan! Ban the scan!
All right, well, what do we tell Dolan?
Ban the scan!
What do we tell Bezos?
Ban the scan!
What do we tell the NYPD?
Ban the scan!
Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for all the advocates, for all of the council members, for all of you who have joined us today. And thank you for making it possible to bring us one step closer to banning facial recognition.
That's right.
I'm not taking Q&A.
Oh, no, we can take questions.
I'm not sure who this is for, but is there anything citizens can do to protect themselves against cameras at all?
I mean, facial recognition gets more powerful every day. Facial recognition is constantly getting better at tracking our faces, and you see people who thought they could wear a mask just a couple years ago and be safe from facial recognition. But now facial recognition can actually track people even when they are wearing a mask. The only way to protect New Yorkers isn't by wearing a disguise, it's not by getting special clothing, it's by outlawing the technology.
And where's this information going once it's collected? Do you have any idea? Just individual companies?
That's a great question. That's part of what we're also trying to. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. My first time. That's a great question. That's a lot of what we are trying to do in pushing every single agency or any private entity to share that information. Transparency is key. New Yorkers have a right and deserve to give consent. And right now, that piece is missing. We have no way of knowing when they're collecting that data. It's not just facial recognition, it's also all biometric data. So it can be very abusive, and we've only ever seen it be abusive. We haven't seen it really run its course in any other way. So part of what our questions will be to the administration today is, what do we know what this data is being used for? Where does it live publicly? How can you know you're on a list? People are not notified that they are, so we're going to be asking those questions.
And do you know if it's shared amongst other companies or anything like that?
That's another great question. Oh, it is.
You want to answer that then?
Yeah, I mean, I think the advocates here, the experts, they know it is being shared, and obviously
But
is.
who's it being shared with?
I mean, it could be what we're going to ask today from the agencies is that question, but the private entities, the Dolan kind of dynamic is we want to know where this information is going, who it's being sold to, who it's being sent to, who it's being shared with. But you know, the experts here say that it is absolutely being shared, but we're going to ask those questions today.
Okay. Can I get your name in?
Jennifer Gutierrez.
Spell your last name for me, please.
Gutierrez.
And who you with? Your affiliation?
Sorry?
Your affiliation?
I'm a council member and I'm the chair for the Council's Technology.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, me and Council Member Natasha Williams. It's a co-hearing? A joint hearing, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman.
I don't even have one for me, homie.
All right, anybody else got questions?
I can add to that a little bit.
Sure.
I can't speak so much to the data, that Dolan's company extracts necessarily. We have a lot of questions about where data collected by city agencies and private landlords is going, but I can give a few examples of how information is shared. For example, ICE officials have mined state driver's license databases across the country using facial recognition technology, analyzing millions of driver photos without people's knowledge. So that's when you register at the DMV, right? ICE has that information, and they use that. ICE has that information, and they use that to target people for detention and deportation. Another example, a private company that others have mentioned, Clearview AI, which has significantly expanded the reach of facial recognition, and they rely on. They build their database by mass web scraping of our images from social media and across the internet, billions and billions of images. They sell access to that data to law enforcement agencies, private businesses, international entities, and police departments. That has included within New York City, and that includes countries with anti-LGBTQ laws, just for example. But it goes a lot further than that, and looking forward to next.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank y'all.
See,